friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Riya Gandhi and I'm here to help you in your journey to crack UGC-NET English Exam. In today's video, I'm going to break down some of the most complex concepts of one of the most important literary figures, not just in the field of literary criticism, but also from UGC-NET point of view, and that is Mikhail Bakhtin. Friends, if you go through the previous year question papers of UGC-NET English Paper 2, you will realize that several questions have been asked related to Mikhail Bakhtin and his most famous concept of dialogism. So if you are preparing for your UGC-NET English exam, join me as we break down some of his most important concepts in this video. Mikhail Bakhtin is considered to be one of the most important Russian literary critics, philosophers and scholars whose literary contributions effectively shaped the Western mode of thinking in terms of language, literature and most importantly aesthetics. When we are talking about Mikhail Bakhtin, he was born in 1895 in pre-revolutionary Russia or the Russia before Stalin. While growing up, Mikhail Bakhtin was extremely active in discussions related to literature, religion, philosophy and art, and because of which, after he completed his studies in 1918, he started his own Bakhtin circle, which constituted a group of like-minded philosophers and scholars who gathered together and discussed various topics related to religion, philosophy, literature, but their prime interest was German philosophy. When we are talking about the literary outputs by Mikhail Bakhtin, his first published work was Art and Responsibility in 1919. The time in which Mikhail Bakhtin was writing was extremely turbulent owing to certain socio-cultural and economic upheavals. Although he was born in pre-revolutionary Russia, he still had to go through the Russian Revolution of 1917, the ensuing civil war, and see the rise and emergence of Stalin. During the time when he was writing, Russia was predominantly governed by Marxist ideology to combat the Tsarist rule. But upon the arrival of Stalin, the Marxist ideology also became very oppressive, because of which you see a lot of strict censorships and governmental controls. During this time, information was considered to be very dangerous and strict actions were taken to hide it. Because of which a lot of Russian critics and scholars had to face those strict censorships, had to go underground or face exile. Sadly, Mikhail Bakhtin was one of them. But despite facing these turbulences, he produced some of the most significant literary works which are continued to be read even today. These works are the Dialogic Imagination, Rabelais and His World, and the important essay Discourse in the Novel. But the most important seminal work written by Mikhail Bakhtin is Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics, which was published in 1929. It was in the Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics that he first introduced the concept of dialogism. Now, what is dialogism? In the Bakhtinian world, if you want to understand dialogism or dialogic criticism, you first need to understand one of its most important concepts, dialogue. Now, when we are talking about a dialogue, it basically means, in the most general sense of the word, any conversation that happens between two or more than two people in a literary context. According to Bakhtin, a dialogue will always imply a relationship. Now, what is this kind of relationship? I'm not talking about any social relationship like a brother and sister relationship or a friendship or any of such kind of relationships. What Bakhtin emphasized the most upon was the relationship based on difference. Now, what is this difference? For example, when two people engage in a dialogue with each other, they are bound to be different from each other based upon their opinions, based upon their accents, their viewpoints, their socio-cultural backgrounds, their geographical locations, and more. That difference will always be retained when they are talking to each other or when they engage in a dialogue. According to Bakhtin, mutual difference is actually the essence of the dialogue. In fact, it is a prerequisite for the dialogue to exist. Based upon such notions, we realize that Bakhtin, in fact, emphasized utterance. In fact, he has given more importance to parole than long. Parole and long are two of the most important concepts related to English literature and specifically literary criticism provided by Saussure, wherein parole means our everyday conversations and long means the set of grammatical rules we use to create conversations. Now, you must be thinking that how is this concept of dialogue provided by Bakhtin is applicable to English literature? So, according to Bakhtin, when one person engages in a dialogue with the other person, he is constantly aware of the other in his speech. What does this mean? This basically means that when one person talks to other person, he is aware of the other person's differences in the sense that maybe he has differing opinions to him, or he is belonging from different socio-cultural backgrounds, geographical locations, maybe belonging from different gender. And so based upon these differences, he is going to craft the entire communication or maybe craft his response. When you do that, you are aware of the other in your speech. Similarly, in a particular novel, according to Bakhtin, you will always find the traces of other novels. He treats every novel like an individual dialogue or an individual utterance. And similarly, in such utterances, in such literary texts, you will always find the traces of other literary texts that may or may not have been intentionally put by the author. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in English literature, and that is intertextuality. It was developed by Roland Barthes and Julia Kristeva. Let's understand this with the help of an example. Whenever you read a particular book or a particular poem, have you had that experience when you're reading it, you feel like, oh, this is quite similar to something else I have read, or I have seen this before in a particular movie. That connection is called as intertextuality. This may or may not have been intentionally put by the author, but it is still there. Maybe you found it as a reader based upon your perspective, but that connection is still there. That is basically called as intertextuality. And when we relate this concept of intertextuality with Bakhtin's concept of dialogism, basically it means that you will always find an otherness in the novel or any literary piece of work that you are reading. You will always find the traces of other novels in these works. So, dialogism basically means finding out the multiplicity of voices. Maybe it could be the characters' viewpoints who are belonging from different walks of life, and also understanding their different viewpoints. And even if you go deeper, you will realize that it is about the multiple novels, their voices, their ideas present in one single novel. Now, what we have so far discussed is Mikhail Bakhtin's life, his concept of dialogue, and how it is applicable to literature. One thing you have to remember when it comes to Bakhtin's concept of dialogism is that it basically focuses upon the multiplicity of voices, ideas, viewpoints, characters, their socio-cultural backgrounds, and all of them are given equal respect and attention. Now, when it comes to Bakhtin's concept of dialogism, there are three most important terms that you need to know, especially from UGC-NET point of view. These terms are heteroglossia, carnivalesque, and chronotope. According to Bakhtin, heteroglossia basically refers to the variety of levels of dialogue and language in a novel. In fact, Bakhtin goes so far as to say that novel is a prime example of heteroglossia. How is that the case? In a novel, you will find various characters belonging from different walks of life. At the same time, they might have different socio-cultural viewpoints, which will create the socio-cultural conflicts around which the entire novel is set. The first example that comes to my mind is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, published by Mark Twain. In this particular novel, you will find different characters like Jim and Huck. They belong from different socio-cultural and class backgrounds, because of which you will find the class conflicts that are happening in this particular novel. But the most important thing that Bakhtin has emphasized upon in heteroglossia is that the author should treat every viewpoint, every character, and every voice on the same continuum, which means working class discourses, the voices of women, the voices of ethnic minorities in a novel should be treated on the same continuum as it is being treated of the dominant voice. It's okay if these voices are not overthrowing the dominant voice, but their existence is a proof that the dominant voice is not going unchallenged. This was one of the most important things when it comes to remembering and understanding heteroglossia in a particular novel. While discussing the concept of dialogism in his most seminal work, Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics, Mikhail Bakhtin compares Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment and Leo Tolstoy's novels. And he says that Crime and Punishment is a perfect example of a dialogic novel. Why? Because Dostoevsky has treated every character, every viewpoint, and their socio-cultural differences on the same continuum, unlike Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy's characters are basically the mouthpieces of one single author. There is a very authoritative, authorial discourse in Leo Tolstoy's novels, which you don't find in Fyodor Dostoevsky. You find a variegated nature of opinions, and all of them are given equal attention and they are treated on the same level. The next important literary term provided by Mikhail Bakhtin is Carnivalesque. He developed this term in detail in his most seminal work, Rabelais and His World. According to Bakhtin, Carnivalesque basically refers to the laughter, the bodily functions, the parody, the ugly, and the grotesque. When you look at these words, especially laughter and bodily functions, you will realize that these are some of the things that the government cannot put a sanction to. In fact, these things, they escape classification, they escape theorization, and they escape possession, which means that they are basically the other, the ultimate other, two things that the government can actually put a sanction on. The presence of carnivalesque in literature, like bodily functions, laughter, grotesque, parody, all of this tries to subvert the main authorial or the dominant voice, which is sanctioned by the government or any of the institutional authority present in the novel. For example, Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes becomes one of the most classic examples of carnivalesque. In that particular novel, you will see that Cervantes has tried to subvert the common social and literary conventions. You will see a lot of characters engage in exaggerated, humorous adventures, making it seem extremely absurd and making us question that why is this happening in the first place, which is trying to subvert the rigid social hierarchies. And finally, the last and the most important literary term provided by Bakhtin to solidify his concept of dialogism is chronotope. To understand chronotope, you only need to look at the novel's setting. Any novel will have a setting, that is a time in which the specific incident has occurred and the place at which the specific incident has occurred. Chronotope is basically that. It is a time and space of the novel. Bakhtin even argues that the notions of time and space are fluid. That is, they keep on changing age after age. For example, before the modern age, the notions of time and space in literature were quite linear. That is, the plots happened in a sequential manner. But during the modern age and after the modern age, when works of stream of consciousness and science fiction and dystopic fiction started to emerge, the notions of time and space, they got dismantled. You find non-linearity. You find that past, present and future are on the same continuum. Apart from these terms, there are various other important terms provided by Mikhail Bakhtin like unfinalizability, centripetal and centrifugal forces, Menippean satire, double voice discourse, which are extremely important from UGC-NET point of view. If you want to learn about these terms in more detail and crack UGC-NET English exam, don't worry, I've got you covered. I am taking live UGC-NET English exam classes wherein I'm sharing certain essential tips and strategies which help me crack the exam in just first attempt. Not only that, but I'm also covering some of the most complex topics and concepts related to the history of British English literature and literary criticism, which will help you in your UGC-NET English exam preparation. Since these are live one-on-one classes, I'm also providing personalized guidance tailored to your needs and requirements, which will help you in your journey to crack UGC-NET English exam. If you want to know more about the courses I offer, the sessions I take, and the notes I provide, feel free to check out my TopMate page. It's topmate.io/Riya Gandhi. I've shared the link in the description box below, so don't forget to check it out. That's it for today's video, folks. If you found this video informative and helpful, please like it and share it with other UGC-NET English aspirants. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any videos that I will be uploading on such important literary figures in the future. Thank you so much for watching till the end, guys. I'll see you in the next one.